Hey there, welcome to another edition of Wisdom with Nick, or Wisdom Talks or Walks, whatever the heck this is going to end up being. I have no clue. I'm just starting and seeing where this goes. So, my goal is to help you change, help you to achieve the goals and dreams that you want through coaching or sharing my wisdom here. I also want to encourage you because your path and your journey, you're going to need energy and motivation to get there, and that's just something that you need to build in as a regular routine. So that's another goal I have, to encourage you. And then the last thing I want to do is help you discover God's heart and purpose for your life.
I told you to pause because it'll be easier to cut it. Okay.
Pause.
Go.
Well, now that we're back from turning off the kitchen exhaust
They're
fan,
not going to see that because we're going to cut it.
you're going to be able to hear it though.
Yes, I've learned.
So those are kind of like the three things I want to do in this segment. Share wisdom that'll help you change, encourage you to achieve your goals, and help you discover God's heart and purpose for your life. So with that, I'm going to introduce my guest host. My host? This is my wife. Super wonderful, awesome Kate. So much of my life journey has been intertwined with yours. So it's wonderful to have you a part of this and be doing this with you. So thank you for joining me. So
So I'm going to be taking an interviewing role because we both have noticed that videos and podcasts are a lot more interesting with two people bouncing off of each other and talking to each other, asking each other questions rather than just one person monologuing. So my first question is going to be, what changed your life?
Jesus. That's the easy answer. What changed my life? My goodness. That's a big question. It's a big question, and I don't quite know how to break it down because, right, I lived 34 years, coming up on 35 years. And so, like, I would say that as a young kid, I always wanted to be great or do something significant with my life. But I grew up in poverty, and I grew up in a home that had significant trauma, and that impacted and shaped the way that I saw the world. I pretty much believed that people were lucky. And it was just circumstance, really. And if I could just find the right circumstance, I could finally find the life I was longing for. But that never happened for 20 some years.
And I think, just throwing in there real quick, I think the life you were longing for looked a very specific way. And I think that's changed, right?
Yes. See, this is so wonderful about having you here. Thank you. I'm so honored and grateful. So yes, specifically how it looked was I wanted to be, one of the 1%ers. I wanted to be super wealthy, all that stuff. Having a nice house, having nice cars, having nice clothes. And that was really an idol that I worshipped, and then it also became something that I would not literally murder, but in my heart, with the anger and the frustration of being stuck and not being able to get out and get ahead, I would be angry and murderous in my heart towards people if I couldn't get what I wanted. So I struggled with those two things, idolatry and murder. lust and anger.
And just to clarify, we're not talking about actually like stabbing somebody with a knife or even wanting that in your heart. More just like I will hurt you in order to get what I want, or in order to get you to stop doing something, or in order for me to get ahead. Whatever my desires are, it doesn't matter if you are hurt by me doing. That's what we're talking about with murder. Like,
Yes.
having murder in your heart is just like, I don't care if you get hurt. I want what I want.
Mm-hmm. By murder, I'm really referring to the way that I would use my words to really tear people apart who were standing in my way of getting what I wanted. Or I mean, a lot of it was thoughts, internal conversations and internal like imaginations and fantasies. So that was kind of where I was going and headed. It was like, as a Christian, trying to figure out, how do I follow Jesus and how do I pursue the American dream? Especially with the world inundating us with you must be self-sufficient, self-determined, self-made man. If you want to be happy, you'll achieve your dreams, and all of that gets intermixed into our Christianity and creates a lot of what's the word? Disharmony, I'll put it that way. So, what changed my life was I couldn't achieve that which I desired. It seemed like nothing would work. Started a blog, that felt like it didn't work. I went and learned a coaching process, that didn't seem to work. That actually introduced me to a lot of things I didn't know. So I would say what changed my life was discovering that underneath of all my drivenness, all my anger, and all my lust, and all the dysfunctional behaviors and emotions and thought patterns that goes with it, along with the relationships I surrounded myself with, the people I was attracted to, all of that really kind of combined together to make my life miserable. And there were several people that kind of helped influence me, but then two books in particular that really kind of opened my eyes to the change process was Dr. Henry Cloud's Power of the Other and Kurt Thompson's Anatomy of the Soul. And then they describe that we change in relationship. And it's actually being around good, healthy people. Pardon the interruption, but here's an introduction to Phoebe, one of our little kitties. We have another one, and he's a huge cat. But once I understood that so in particular Kurt Thompson was able to integrate a theology with neurobiology. And once I understood that it was actually in the process of being in a relationship, in a secure attachment relationship, that's how you actually change, is internalizing someone who's better and healthier than you. Which made total sense why we need the gospel, and why we need the Holy Spirit working in our hearts. And so it gave me a glimmer of hope that happiness and contentment and peace and success and achieving your dreams and your calling weren't just fool's gold. It wasn't a fool's errand. It was it's actually possible, and there's people who have done that work, the deep heart work. So because of that, I entered into a grueling, long process. I didn't want to enter it. It was very much in denial that I needed counseling or therapy.
I was gonna ask if you were. I was gonna see if you were brave enough to share that.
Yes, I am, and fortunately, we found. I'll say, Kate, you found two phenomenal Christian counselors who had been through their own deep heart work and trauma work. And that made all the difference because as I've discovered, there are a lot of counselors and therapists out there who are, it's a job for them. And it is very clinical.
Good way of putting it.
So, but for the people we were with, it was a calling, and so they were invested into it because they had a love to see us. They actually had a want and a desire to see us through it. But it wasn't like a controlling, like they didn't control, it was entirely up to us. We were totally free, but it was hard. It was hard to enter into pain, and I would say that is how my life changed, was being terrified to go, discovering first that I really didn't feel fear, and that I was really terrified to go towards the pain. And that sadly is where pretty much our entire culture and a lot of Christianity is. They do not want to go towards their pain, but it's in the pain that we find Jesus, and we find true healing, and we find true redemption. And so I would say that man, I'm so much more secure. Like, I was actually listening back to some of our early recordings in counseling, and oh my goodness, I could just hear all the anxiety in my voice and in my body that I wasn't even aware was all there. You're just living life and you're just going through it, but you're wondering why am I so miserable? Why do I feel so bad most of the time? So you do things and you keep yourself busy. I couldn't sit still. Okay, it's a long tangent, but that's kind of, what was your question? How did I change? How did my life change?
Well, really quick, I just want to clarify that I said, I asked if you were brave enough to share about counseling because there, particularly in the Christian world, there is a stigma with counseling, that it's bad, that it's not, or that it's shameful, not necessary, or even if you do counseling, it should only be for, people who have just had a death or something like that. There's no shame in it. It's absolutely, and I think that stigma is finally falling away. You see a lot more advertisements for things like BetterHelp and a lot more people embracing the counseling process, but it's one thing to say, yeah, sure, counseling as a concept is okay with me, but it's a totally different thing to say, I am in counseling. And it takes a lot of humility to admit that, and that was the biggest part of the process for us, was just realizing our own sinfulness, realizing how we fall short, realizing how much we actually needed to go through that process, admit how we'd sinned against each other and how broken we were and how much we were needy, because being needy in our culture is also not smiled upon. So that was just a little tangent about counseling.
But you bring up a really good point, which is neediness. When you've grown up with tons and tons of trauma, your need, well, even if it's not tons of trauma, even if it's little t traumas, what usually gets us into trauma in the first place is a need and a desire for someone.
Yep.
And that gets exploited to your detriment and your abuse in, I mean, a myriad of ways, which I'm not going to go into here. But we all know, like literally, if you are living and breathing, you know what it is to be abused and to experience trauma, a fight, flight, freeze response that was significant enough that your brain fragmented, your body had to compartmentalize to preserve life. So, say hi. She can't say hi.
I don't know why that made me laugh so much. She can't say hi.
Yeah. So need. So when you grow up in those environments, you learn to hide your need. You learn that you can't depend on people because they take advantage of you. They exploit you for their own lust and anger.
And you curse yourself because of that need. You know, for me, I'm too sensitive. I'm broken in this way or that way or the other way. I shouldn't have needed. And then you curse that, like, well, I'm never going to need anything from anyone again. Which keeps you from doing the thing you need to do, which is reaching out for help.
Yeah. And I mean, it's scary because if you reach out for help and this person doesn't see you the way that you need to be seen, the way that you need to be attuned to, the way that you need someone to be able to bear what you're going through, like the more it creates more debris. And so then you learn, okay, I can't open up. And that's so true in Christian circles, especially, where there's this, you have to have a facade that you have everything together and that you're not really struggling underneath, because people don't know how to handle that. And so then they respond with contempt and they tell you, well, you just need to get over it, or you just need to read your Bible more, you need to pray more, or you need to just believe the truth. And it's like, no, yes,
those things are true.
Those things are true, but
it's not the whole picture.
It's not the whole picture. And when you have just that picture, you get put back under what we would call the law, the Jewish law, the 10 Commandments that are condemning, because, and so then it produces death. We know that the law brings death, but we also know that the law is extremely good because it does point to a holy, holy God who wants to be in a relationship with us. But we can't achieve perfection to be back in relationship with God in his holiness through the law or through our own self-effort. And that was the whole point of the sacrificial system, was to point to Christ doing the work for us.
You nailed it with self-effort. I was just thinking of being good enough is another way to phrase being under the law. Is like, well, you have to do this and this and this in order to be accepted, in order to be loved, in order to be good enough. But we are free from that now. We live in an age of grace and mercy where you don't have to be good enough to be accepted. So being put back under that law really stirs me up.
Yeah.
It's not what the church was meant to be.
No. And grace goes with truth. And that is that, yeah, you are a sinner, but you are in a growth process called sanctification, where you're in relationship with other believers and other people who love you for who you are, and they know your brokenness and they know your weak points, and they're encouraging you on to live out the life God's called you to live in grace, in secure love. Because that's the other thing with trauma, is you know you weren't secure. like your environment and your relationships were not safe, and as a result of that, like you can't be needy. And that's one of the things that was really hard and difficult in counseling and therapy, was just overcoming all of the defenses to being vulnerable, because that had to be experienced. It had to be re-experienced to go back into that pain, but not experience re-traumatization in the therapy session, but to experience grace and secure love. And then many experiences like that is a spiritual work. It's a metaphysical, supernatural work that then rewires your brain. It rewires your biochemistry, it rewires your DNA, it rewires your body. They know this because they studied it. Yeah, our change process was long and arduous, but oh my gosh, the price was so worth it. And I understand why most people don't pay the price. It's costly, because you have to confront a lot of things, including relationships that you have, that provide some semblance of goodness and family and acceptance. And a lot of that gets disrupted when you go through a deep healing process. So that is, I think, a pretty good introduction to
I think so too.
how has my life changed. Because now, like, yeah, I still want those things that I wanted before. I still want a house. I still want
Oh, good. I'm glad you came back to the longing.
yeah,
It's changed.
I still want a nice car. I still want nice clothes and those things. But like, they're not like, I'm not pursuing those things to try and fill all the anxiety and insecurity inside of feeling like I'm not loved, I'm not wanted, you know, I have no friends, I've been betrayed, you know, the people I cared about turned against me. I'm not trying to escape that anymore through the pursuit of building a kingdom, because I'm a leader. And so I think that that's kind of where it happened for me as a kid, and my gifting to build and be a leader. I focused on the finished kingdom as like, if I can just achieve that, I'll be content and happy inside, which was always fleeting. But I could never put that into words. I couldn't tell that story. I had to go through my journey and my process to begin to make all of these connections, and begin to what they call integrate the two hemispheres, because in trauma, fragmentation occurs, and so different parts of the brain go offline, and you stop being integrated and whole. And healing is about integrating all of you, and that's what Christ came to do, and he has done. So that's how my life has changed, at least in a 10-minute, 15-minute, 20-minute segment, almost 30 minutes.
25.
I'll just keep on going, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30. I'll hit it somewhere in there.
Shameless plug for my channel. He mentioned he's a leader, and that is one of the 7 gifts. And I have a channel that explores all the 7 gifts and how you, watching this video, you are gifted. You have a gift to give the world. And part of our journey, I think, maybe me more than you. I don't know. What would you say? Me more than you? A huge part of my journey was discovering how I was gifted and having that blessed and called out, that curses I had over my life because of the trauma. You're too sensitive, for example. My sensitivity is a gift. And having that blessed and drawn out was huge in my healing process. Totally changed my life. So I think that was absolutely huge. Do you
That's
think
cool.
that was big for you too?
You just shared how your life has changed.
Yeah, in a nutshell, in a minute or so. Do you think that it was as big for you finding out how you were gifted? Like, you kind of always knew you were a leader. You knew you were attracted to leadership stuff, but having it actually named and drawn out and blessed, was that like ginormous
Yeah,
for you?
it was ginormous because I didn't know the curses on how people had wounded and the lies that I believed because of how I had failed and how people treated that with contempt.
Mm-hmm.
And how instead of receiving the blessing to see, okay, it's underdeveloped and he's immature and he needs to grow. Instead of people seeing that, they saw how inadequate it was because it was extremely immature and wounded. And so many people, the heartache is real. Many people, probably in trying to do well, I don't know if you can say that or not, some of them not at all, not even trying to do well, just being self-serving, cursed my leadership ability in different ways. And I did not know the extent of my story and how I had just continued to live out those lies because I did not have anyone else in my life able to bless that, encourage it, and help it grow and flourish. So yeah, I would say that was a huge influential part of the healing and change process.
Awesome.
Well, I think that this is the end. It feels like it's finished.
The end.
So thank you for being a part of this wisdom talk, walk, sit with Nick. We'll see what it turns into.
I like it, like talk or walk, yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for being my host.
You're so welcome.
And so I hope this helps you consider how your life is going to change. I hope that this also encourages you down a healing path.
Yes.
And to live your calling and your purpose, and to also find and discover God's loving, like just huge heart for you. Like he really cares and he really wants to be involved in your life. So those are my goals. I hope we did that.
Yeah, and if you like this, click like, subscribe, go check out the 7 gifts. It's actually You Are Gifted, at You Are Gifted, 7 at, no, I think it's it's at You Are Gifted on YouTube, at You Are Gifted 7 everywhere else, and nickmeter.com, I think.
That's my website.
Blog.
It's,
Check it out for more information if you like this and you want some more wisdom from people who have lived it. Not that we're any better than you in any way. We're still in a process. It's just that we are farther along this process and we want to help people who are just starting out. So join us on the journey and click all the things down below.
All the things.
All the things.
Except for the spam and
except for dislike.
Yeah, and dislike.
Just click the like and the comment and the subscribe.
Yeah. All right.
Bye.
We're off.